evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, great leaders and great scholars. Thank you very much for joining us once again on this day, the 13th May 2026. Can you imagine? Few weeks to come, it will be June already. In 6 months' time, the year will be finished. It's going so fast. Thank you for joining us here tonight as we always meet as leaders, as scholars to discuss leadership, because we have realized that leadership, it's a journey. Leadership, it's not a destination. Great leaders are great because they constantly learn. And we meet here to encourage each other, to inspire each other, to correct each other, to empower each other, as we always do. This is a platform where peers empower other peers, or where we talk to each other as leaders. Tonight, we have got a wonderful speaker and a topic. But before I introduce her, may I welcome our regulars, our members, those men and women who are here almost every week or as often as they can. Thank you so much. You know that we learn a lot from each other, and I just want to salute you. But a special welcome to those colleagues who are joining us for the first time. If you are here for the first time, you've never been with us, thank you so much for joining us, and you're so welcome. Please feel at home. This is a safe space. This is where leaders meet, and we interact with each other with respect and with humility, and we're more than happy to engage. The format is that we introduce the speaker, and then the speaker will address us, and after that, we can engage each other. My name is Mazwe Majola. I'm from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership. Tonight, we are discussing mortgage bonds, the Achilles heel of security tenor. This is what we are discussing tonight. I've had several people who were sending messages and said this is a very interesting topic. Should be a very, very interesting session. So I know that most of you are so looking forward to this topic, and we're going to be addressed tonight by my dear sister, Dr. Soraya Beukes. Let me just read just a snippet of a long profile, as she deserves, and after that she will address us. So Dr. Soraya Beukes is an inspirational human rights lawyer. She's a social justice advocate and academic. Also, she's an author and researcher. She is a socio-economic law lecturer at the Dalla Oma Institute, which is at the University of the Western Cape. She is also a public law lecturer at Cape Peninsula University of Technology and a research associate at Tshwane University of Technology. Her research career is enriched through her multiple Erasmus Mundus research scholarships. Through this, she has earned mobility to University Libre Brussels, where she read her LLD in public law, earning her an international doctoral research certificate. Following this, a postdoctoral fellowship at University Rey Juan Carlos in Madrid. She is also a Sale Fellow, having received the Japanese Ryohei Sasakawa Leaders Fellowship and NRF Scholarship. She is the chairperson of the Dr. Soraya Beukes Foundation, which is an NPO advocating for mentoring and coaching, skills development, women empowerment, and gender equity in higher education and the corporate environment. She is a reviewer to various peer-reviewed journals. She is currently a member of the editorial board of BRICS plus Journal of International Relations and Development. And as a BRICS Community of Practice Fellow, she serves as a chairperson of the Social and Ethics Committee for the Social Housing Regulatory Authority on behalf of the National Minister of Human Settlement. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Soraya Beukes, she is one of us. She always attends here. She was here last week, and she knows our platform. She knows our format, and we are so grateful that she was able to come and address us tonight. My sister, over to you. Thank you so much for availing yourself. I know that you travel a lot and you're so busy, but the fact that you accepted our invite just to share some thoughts and some nuggets with us, we really appreciate. Over to you, sis. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And yes, I am very humbled to serve on this platform tonight. I'm humbled by those that is in attendance. Thank you very much for making your time to come and listen to me. And yes, Prof. Mazwe, for bringing us all together like this so that we can just develop that African think tank that we are looking for, so that the knowledge stays in the South and develop in the South. And this is one of my passionate reasons for speaking about mortgage bonds is my affiliation to the right to housing, on which my PhD is written. And ever since that, I've always been trying to see which angle of housing can we deal with in a more effective way. I think that the right to housing is very undermined in the larger society, not just in South Africa, also in the world. We've almost got 1 billion people that lives without adequate shelter. And so when somebody is able to acquire their home, and particularly in South Africa, where we have a right to access housing in terms of the Constitution, and that you need to progressively get access to that right. And so if you have walked the course of where you are actually owning a home, what you have to be attentive to is that because it's such a big asset, if you buy it for cash or you pay it off immediately and you don't have a bond, of course, you are not obligated to anyone. But because it's a big asset, you can always bond it to do something else. So it's not just those that buys through mortgage, it's also because you can realize this asset. And I'm not saying that mortgage bonds are bad, and I'm not saying that we must not pay our debt, but I say in South Africa, we have a particular affinity to the right to housing. Let me share my slides with you before I go any further, so that we can get into the business of the day. And just let me know if you can see my slides in presentation mode.
Yes, we can see it. We can see it, Doc.
All right. Okay, so as I was saying, the right to housing in South Africa and across the world under the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, on which our Bill of Rights is fashioned, the right to housing is very much protected in South Africa, but the way mortgage bonds have destroyed that security is untenable because of our constitutional democracy. And it's not that we cannot change it. It's just that, as we all know, only a critical mass will change things. And we have become far too complacent in letting the banks sell our properties under price, under the market value. So tonight I'm looking at your housing and property rights, your limited right that you give to the bank when you take a mortgage, And that right that can be enforced when you default and lead into a forced sale. But there is court oversight and international best practice that goes against the grain of most of what is happening in our environment, and particularly in the court environment. There's been too many hits and misses in us losing billions of rands in home ownerships that is irrecoverable, and people are unable to recover, to reconnect with housing. As you can see, with Stats SA, 17.8 million households own their homes in South Africa, of which 60% are homeowners that either it's mortgage or it's already bought or they've inherited it. And as Black South Africans, we make up 80% of that ownership. And of course, because of our numbers. But more importantly, the property values remain significantly unequal across the racial groups. As you know, that it depends on location and of course the value of the property that actually ultimately wins. But just to give you a world oversight on ownership of homes, South Africa sits in the world standard. As you can see, Australia 66%, the United Kingdom 63%, and United States 65%. And South Africa is right up there in the 60s, which makes us vulnerable to this mortgage that could hang over those properties that's owned and probably mostly mortgaged to the bank. Just to give you our challenges, this is how it looks. Between 23 and 25, there's about 13,000 houses sold by forced or execution every year, year on year, and it's not getting better. And it's not that houses shouldn't be sold when you reach a difficulty on payment. It is how that process unfolds that niggles me and that I want to share with you. But let us just get a perspective of homes. The estimated forced home sales per year is 9 to 12,000 per year. Now let us look at the house value lost per year. Between 3 billion and 6 billion is lost. These figures are derived from the discounted auction prices, which is 30 to 60% below the market value. So you can understand the amount of assets that sits mainly with the majority of our population is undermined by this below value sale of an asset that when you mortgage it to the bank, the only way they will give you a mortgage if they have a market value. And if you are borrowing 1 million, they want at least that million in market value, right? That is how you secure your bond. But when you get into financial difficulties and you can't pay, they don't value the market value. They will often sell your house of R1 million for 500,000. And this is where that 3 to 6 billion sits. So it's almost twice that amount that we are losing every year on housing. Just to show you how the loss is calculated, your house is valued at R1 million, they sell it for 600,000. So effective economic loss per home in South Africa is between 3 and 500,000 in those four sales. So you can see how the figures add up. And it's not just stats. It's people's homes that we are talking about. What we call your Section 26 home. That right is a right for a person, whether they stay in Soweto or Sandton, whether they stay in Khayelitsha or Camps Bay. That right atones to you. It's not a right for poor people, the right to access housing. It's your right to a primary residence. So if that primary residence is under threat of a mortgage sale, the best that should happen is that they must sell the house at the market value for you to recover and to restart what they call progressive realization. But that isn't happening in our country. And like I want to reiterate again, we are not going against paying our mortgage. And I'm not advocating for there not to be a mortgage environment in a country. It's a best practice around the world. I am saying our constitutional democracy gives us more protection over the right to housing than most other jurisdictions. So yeah, I've just calculated for you the conservative scenario is 2.4 billion per year is lost. Mid-range is 4 billion and high-end scenario 6 billion per year is lost in the people in the country that owns the least of the economic well-being. It's their homes. It's their assets that sits in this. And this scenario is aided and abetted by the courts because the courts have systems in place. And one of the very large, overwhelming system is the Constitution. And I will show you now. This is just to show you the continuous loss. The homeowner, you are the largest loser in this because you remain liable for that shortfall. When the house of $1 million is sold at 700,000, sorry, if you owe 700,000, it's owed. Your force price is 600,000. You lose your 400,000 in equity and you remain to be responsible, liable for the balance. And it's that is the Achilles heel for me to security of tenure because the Constitution does not allow that kind of deprivation of a right. There must be a balance. And this is where I feel the courts are letting us down in that balancing test. Not only is the home owner losing, the state is losing. Society is losing because it increased the housing insecurity. There's pressure on the social housing system. It reduces, most importantly, our household wealth accumulation. Like I say, it's the 80% of the population that is suffering under this system and this broad inequality effect. In South Africa, the highest wealth loss is forced sales. And that should make us think mortgage bonds remain the Achilles heel because loss of the home does not end financial reliability. But best practice around the world shows differently. We are a developing country. Why should our laws be more dogmatic? In fact, it should take on a social justice approach in the South. But in South Africa, we dominate with a social justice constitution that says in its preamble, it starts to say that we recognize the injustices of the past and we want to heal those injustices. And we want to prosper our people moving forward. That is what the preamble says in a nutshell. So can you understand that when you are lensing anything through law, you need to look at the Constitution first. That is your bedrock. So you cannot let debt trump the constitutional imperatives. And this is what is happening. You can see in the United Kingdom that the debt may be discarded after a period of time. In the United States, you walk away. The bank cannot claim the shortfall. In France, they can restructure and they can write off the mortgage, but not in South Africa. In South Africa, we have bonds that are fully recourse, even under this Rule 46 that I will talk to you now. And the reason for this is because we want to protect the credit market stability. We want to prevent reckless borrowings and maintain a banking sector confidence. But all these things exist in the rest of the world where this isn't happening. So why do we have to be special that this have to atone to us? But let me come to the creditor enforcement versus the constitutional protection of your house, the bank and you. Let's see how we are balanced in that. Section 26 is clear that you have a right to access housing, they can't evict you arbitrarily, and that they must engage with you. So, through security of tenure, you must have strong safeguards, socio-economic reform, and foreclosure that balances. And then we have our property rights, because remember, our house can also be our property. So it has double rights. You also have a right to not be deprived of your property. And if you are going to be deprived, the Constitution is clear. It must support the market value of the property. It says that in section 25(3), the market value. So there's no expropriation of any land under our Constitution without compensation. We cannot rewrite that law unless we change the Constitution. Because section 25(2) says that if you're going to expropriate my land, you must compensate me. So if we want to change that, if you want to write a law for that, we need a 75 majority in Parliament to vote for that change. And you can understand how tenuous that is, just to give that as a small digression. But let us say, why are mortgage yields, the mortgage bond, the Achilles heel? Because it enables home ownership, but it also facilitates the loss of homes. And we remain vulnerable to this structural inequality. The tension is between our right to property and that debts must be paid, but our right to property gives us a right to have our property sold at market value. The Constitution tells us that. Why are you selling my property under market value? Today, at this investment conference that is in the country at the moment, I don't know if you've seen that, our president opened that conference and said South Africa is a democratic country where the Constitution gives us legal certainty. Let that sink in, because we just often undermine the prowess of our Constitution. You must understand that it is our moral, our lawful, our compass as citizens. Whoever trots on the earth of this sovereign, that Constitution must be observed. Our Constitution is not there for politicians to make or break. Our Constitution is there to guide banks, to guide insurance companies, to guide oil companies, to guide whoever is wanting to be in this country. It's not something that is divorced from us. We had a constitutional shift when we went from a parliamentary sovereignty to our constitutional democracy, where the courts must now balance our rights, not just enforce contracts. Our rights must be balanced insofar as dignity and our housing rights. But the question is, can South African law truly protect housing rights while sustaining a credit-driven property system? And my answer to that is yes, it can and it should. How? When the court looks at property, which is your Section 26 property, your primary home, if that is coming under the hammer, they must look at your personal circumstances. They must look at whether this property is your primary home. And they must look at Section 36, that wonderful limitation clause. You cannot, as a court, just look at contract law, and they are doing that. And the court is not always doing this, but they are inconsistent, which goes against the grain of what the president said today, that our constitution gives us legal certainty, and it's true. But it must be followed, because you must lens contract law through the Constitution so that you can balance those Section 36 rights. How did that come about? Let me tell you, from 1994 to 2005, we continued the trend of the apartheid system, whereby the clerk of the court could stamp an execution order for your house. Up till 2005, we continued that. So you can understand how people labored under their homes being sold willy-nilly. With this Jafta case, it was in one of the far-flung areas, Prince Albert in the Western Cape, where people were taking their RDP homes and using it to secure small-time loans like 700 Rand, 500 Rand, 1,000 Rand. And then those lenders came after them through lawyers, of course, and they eventually got a judgment for execution and sold these homes for 500 and 700 and 1,000 Rand. And then an NPO took it on and took it to the Constitutional Court because this was an unbearable situation. We cannot let somebody lose their Section 26 right by a mere clerk of the court, and the court never had oversight. So that case changed and said that when a house is up for execution, it must go to the court and the court must decide it. That means it must follow a legal process. So it cannot just, you can't just get a default judgment, then go to the clerk of the court and say, look, they didn't pay the default, so please let us execute, because that is what they could do before. This changes that. Now the court had oversight. But then that was the magistrate's court. And then the High Court continued this until Gudungwana in 2011 changed that. They continued to sell homes for a pittance and let the clerk of the court, the registrar as they call it at the High Court, stamp these approvals without any judicial oversight. Now, the process of execution is default, court, judicial oversight, and then sale. Judicial oversight. Rule 46 of the High Court. This rule was brought about, that's why it's got an A next to it, because there's a Rule 46 also. This was brought about by the Godongwana case, around the fact that not only must the court have oversight, there's a whole list of things the court must look at. The court has the power to set a reserve price. So why are we selling homes under market value when the court holds that power? Today, we're still doing it. The court has the power to set a reserve price, but the court sets all kinds of reserve prices, including like 30 Rand and including like 1 Rand and 10 Rand and 1,000 rand. For homes, that's hundreds of thousands of rands. And that is my Achilles heel with the courts. Despite the fact that Section 36 says that you need to balance these rights. And this is how the rights must be balanced. I took this section out so that you can see this is not just a superficial theory of law. The Section 36 limitation says that if you're going to limit my rights, you must look at the following. First of all, it must be based on human dignity, equality, and freedom, all those things of the Bill of Rights. But more importantly, you must consider these things. You must look at the nature of the right. This right, very important, it's the housing right. You must look at the importance of the purpose of the limitation. The limitation, the reason you want to sell my house and take it away in that way is to settle the debt. It's for no other reason. So why are you selling my house for 30,000 and it's not settling the debt? You're not balancing here. The nature and extent of the limitation. If you limit my right by selling the house, you are infringing on my security of tenure. So it's a big limitation. The relationship between the limitation and its purpose is to settle the debt. Less restrictive means to achieve the purpose for you to lose your house, but to not lose your dignity in the same time. The court must set the reserve price at the market value. If my house is market valued at 5 million, I owe 1 million. If you sell it, I have 4 million left to restart progressive realization. Why are we not doing this? How can we let the courts, let banks sell our homes in the manner that they do without balancing our rights according to Section 36? Anytime your rights are infringed, this limitation clause must be followed. Anytime, any right in the Bill of Rights. So that is why I'm saying to you, it's not that we cannot change this. Despite all of that, the practice continues here. June 2025, 10 months ago, the financial ombud gets the bank to write off 233,000 from a loan arrears of a house that was sold for 10,000 rand. It is not just pitiful, it's sad because we have all the tools to. It is unthinkable to not be secured in a home. I don't even want to get to talk into our informal settlements, but I'm just talking about us having achieved a standard where we could actually afford a home. If you lose that home, if you do not have an address, you must understand where you get sick. When you go to a hospital, when they discharge you, that pavement, there where you stand, that's your home. That is how dire it is. So the Achilles heel lingers. Mortgages enables ownership, but it causes loss. The core tension is South Africa's full recourse model prioritizes credit stability over post-foreclosure relief. And you can see my example of post-foreclosure relief is, let me take the market value of this asset that you, the bank, said you will borrow me the money because the asset has this value. Why can we not go back to when we signed this mortgage bond? You said the value of the property is 1 million, so I borrow you 1 million. Why, when I end my relationship, can my property's value not be what the market value is? And of course, if you had any estate agents or banks in the audience, they will say that the banks must recover their money. You're not recovering your money. They will say that we understand that debts must be paid. They will say that if we don't sell it on auction, it takes too long. Why? Because the banks prejudice your home by putting it on an auction list. Why put it on an auction list? It's a capitalist construct. It's not a constitutional democracy evolvement. If you tell nobody that my house is a for sale, then you can put it on the market. But they have a reason why they must put it on an auction list, have a sheriff that earns 3,000 to 7,000 rand for any auction. So the sheriff has no affinity to your Section 26 rights because the sheriff's earnings is selling your home. How can that be? We have a sheriff's board. How can that be? International best practice, comparative systems demonstrate that extinguishing mortgage debt after execution is not legally impossible. It's a policy choice. That's what we need. Here are the countries that takes no recourse. Only South Africa has this full recourse of where the debt is not written off. But you've lost the asset. How do you recover? International best practice, as I said, walk away in the United States. In Spain, there's been a policy shift. Our contemporary challenges shows that we're going to continue down this trend unless we get a critical mass shift, because our challenges stays indebtedness, unemployment, urban housing crisis, and unequal legal representation. We can never be complacent because we don't know how economies changes. So this mortgage bond Achilles heel hangs over most of us. True security of tenure requires strong safeguards, socio-economic reform, and foreclosures that's balanced, meaning sell my property if you must, but give me my market value. That's the way forward. This way, I can restart progressive realization because the Constitution says, I don't need to get this right immediately. If the government helps me, they can do it progressively. So me too, if I'm going to help myself, I can progressively get this right. So when you sell my house under value, you stunt the right there, which means I must now rely on social housing. So how do we stunt that cycle? We have 3.3 million people still living without adequate housing. But the more we build houses, and we are building many, and the more people are getting better economically, we, through the court system, we sell off people's main asset, their home. We currently have this class action that is trying to get out of the stumbling blocks. It's a 60 billion rand forced sales that has happened since 1994. That I think it's one major bank that they are taking on, that the plaintiffs are claiming that the banks historically sold repossessed properties at auction prices far below the market value. They are still struggling to get out of the blocks because they had one or two court appearances, but there's been a stumbling block on fidelity certificates of the advocate and that. But it's all semantics. This is something that you must watch because I'm telling you that this is something that can touch all our lives. So mortgage bonds remain the Achilles heel because the loss of the home doesn't take away the financial liability. This is unconstitutional and goes against the grain of security of tenure and progressive realization to housing. And with that, I thank you for listening attentively. Let me just get back to the screen.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you. This is so informative. This is so insightful, really. I think most of us have got houses, we've got properties, and then we are definitely used to this practice that you take a bond. If you are unable to pay it, then the bank will repossess it and then put it on auction, and then it's just something that it's like uh, so widespread, and we come to be comfortable with it. That well, my house or property will be will be put into auction, and then that's it. After that, but but, but how are banks and obviously the government that making laws are funding each other when it's come to this issue? Because this is not only the problem with um, uh, uh, what for the lack of a better way, whether it's a middle class or working class, but I think everyone in South Africa, you can be working on to find that tomorrow you lose your job or you lose your business. You know that we live in a very unpredictable and volatile environment now. The fact that you are running a business at the moment, you are still able to pay. It doesn't mean that tomorrow you may not lose your business and find yourself unable to pay for your bond. What is the best practice, or how should it be done in a humane manner? That obviously it's not that won't be marginalizing the buyers or the people.
Yeah, you see, it's a habit that continued past 1994 because the draconian world of banks were ruthless in that time because we had a parliamentary sovereignty. So there were no constitution to measure anything by. That's why the Group Areas Act worked, because what the courts did, they implemented the law no matter what the law was. But that's not what the court is anymore. The court must now, they're the custodian of the constitution, they must measure even a prisoner's rights, an accused's rights. All rights must be lensed through the Constitution and then the subsequent laws that you write out of the Constitution. You see, the international best practice, as I've shown you, is that people are able to recover because the debt is written off. And I would imagine in those jurisdictions, they try to then rather sell the house to recover most of the debt and not for 30,000 if you owe 600,000. I would imagine that if you do more deeper research, it's that kind of thing. So for me is, you see, the thing is that you want to pussyfoot with the banking industry because you want your country is getting all kinds of ratings because of the way your banking system is and this kind of gray listing and all of that. So all of this plays into that kind of capitalist ideals. But you see, for those capitalist ideals, there is the principles on business behavior of the United Nations, right? There's that principles that you need to look at when you are going to be behaving unethically because that guides you. And it's not that just because we have a constitutional democracy that this is how it should be here. It should be like that everywhere if you just look at the international treaties, right? The rights under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We as a human race should take our rights more seriously and not view it as if it's superficial, like we mostly say that the Constitution don't work for me and it should be rewritten in all kinds of ways. It doesn't. It works for everybody, and it doesn't single out. And that is why the limitation clause is so important. You see, the problem with policies and law shifting that you need to take on as an NPO or an NGO. Otherwise, government is always going to be sort of busy with government and with business. And the judiciary seems to feed into that because for me, it's clear. With legal certainty, you must lens the way I showed you now, the section 36, right? How else? What other explanation do you want to come that's more maverick? That is going to come to another conclusion that says, no, 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 the balancing of rights is like you lose your house for a pittance, you won't be able to get progressive realization again, and that is fine. That can never be the way the rights are balanced, because that is the opposing view. So it's not even that we need policy. There's already a law. My thing is, there should be a summit with the judiciary about this mortgage, bonds, and homes. I'm not saying have a summit with the judiciary for every other right. The right to housing is a springboard right. If you do not have a home, you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't go to a hospital, you can't vote because you haven't got an address. So it's a springboard right. You can't get your labor rights. You need to, and the dignity. How would you have dignity if you have a job but you don't have a home? It's not a standalone right. It's an interrelated right. But what I'm saying, it warrants a better scrutiny because we are all sitting ducks. Tomorrow you lose your job. We are all mortgaged to the hilt because it's the only way we can acquire this asset most of the time. But you cannot insure you to the hilt because it all costs money. So that is why I'm saying this is everybody's problem. And we need a judicial inquiry into the judiciary's inconsistency. For me, we must wake up one day and any home that is sold in execution must be at the market value. This way, you will be able to buy yourself the next home or at least a rental space. I see there's a hand up.
Yeah, no,
Prof.
thank you. Thanks, Doc. I'll take Abel shortly. Let me just check there on the chart. Babalwa say this is so informative. This is injustice and abuse of power from our courts and banks. Thank you for this. But how have we allowed it for so long? I personally refuse to buy property from an auction because I've always seen an auction sale as evil. So that is Babalo. And then Dr. Tandiwe Gama. Wow, what an eye-opener to the unfairness and injustice of the current mortgage system. I do hope and pray that the class auction is pursued vigorously to change this system. SA is lagging behind compared to other countries who write off the debt. We can do better. So there is a question there from Babala, and then we'll take Abel as well. Abel is in the estate, what is it called? Estate, yeah, in that industry. Over to you, my brother Abel. Over to you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. Doc, thank you so much for a very informative presentation. Most of the things that you're speaking about, I also didn't know. And like the Prof says, I'm a property practitioner, and this is the industry that I'm in. And I see this often, particularly in distressed properties. So Section 25, it pretty much protects property rights, right? But in practice, we then have the willing buyer, willing seller principle that becomes problematic, particularly when the seller is desperate, right? A homeowner is facing foreclosure. They will often accept a far below market offer simply to avoid losing the property, and this is maybe also the bank's pressure. right? The buyer then negotiates from a position of strength, while the seller negotiates from desperation. I also think that there's a serious lack of awareness where around Rule 46A and judicial oversight in the sale of primary residences. This is something I also didn't know. Sellers, including us too, as estate agents, don't fully understand these protections. Buyers often don't know them. And even as practitioners, we're not fully informed. I am, however, suspicious of banks that they are fully aware of this, but their focus is in recovering of the debt. Okay, so my question is, how do we make Rule 46A a real protection for distressed homeowners and not just a procedural step, especially when market value is undermined by desperation?
You see, the only way, thank you for that question, the only way to really draw attention to this, because I've written several papers on it, and is to petition Parliament, the Standing Committee on Housing, on Human Settlements. We need to petition them. Because you see, it's the same as, just to digress a bit about pension schemes. You know, by the time you retire, they tax your pension every month because the definition of pension is income. And those people in Parliament, they're making these laws which will eat you when you become on that side. So it's the same when it comes to this Rule 46, is that there's no attention to it. We need to, as a population, drive attention to it. Even the Marriage Act. We have the Marriage Act of 1957 that tells you, and that act is still valid. All the apartheid laws are still valid because a law doesn't become invisible because or gets abrogated by disuse. It stays on the law books until Parliament withdraws it. And Parliament's not sitting and looking, okay, let me look at these 10 laws of apartheid, let us withdraw. They're not doing that. Somebody must bring an action. So you have like the marriage law, the Marriage Act, for instance. It has a clause in there that the domicile of the husband is your marital regime. So if you marry a foreign man from any other country in South Africa, the laws of that person's origin, his domicile. So if you marry a person from the UK in South Africa, it's the UK law or the Spanish law or the Ugandan laws, because it's the law of where your husband comes from. Now, you can understand in the equality of our constitution that cannot fly, but it sits as the law until somebody comes and challenges it. The same with this Rule 46. It was changed because of the Gudwana case. It's there where they said the registrar can't do this anymore. It must go to court. And then they empowered the court to, because that decision was a discretion that was written in brackets. The court had a discretion to set a reserve price. So they took the brackets away, meaning the court has a discretion, not an implied discretion. And so now what is the court doing? The court is now just making a discretion based on what is in front of it. The court has the market value, what is owed, what is the municipalities. The court's got all of that because Rule 46 says you must have all these things in front of the court. Still, the court makes a judgment call under the market value. And that is untenable for you to lose your right. Because if you're going to lose your right, because you're losing your right to housing, and the Constitution is clear, if you're going to lose it, it must be a law of general application, meaning it must be for everyone the same. But there must be a justification. There must be a balancing of the rights. So it's justified that you sell my house. But it's not justified that the debt is not covered, because the reason for the sale is to cover the debt. The reason for the forced sale. No bank is saying we're having a forced sale so that we can get 30,000 from the 300. When the bank takes you on and say, we're going to put your house in liquidation, we're going to execute your house because we want to recover our money. It's not doing that. You're not walking away with nothing. And the horrible part of it is, if you get your house snatched out of prosecution, right? It's now not getting sold because somehow you could pay up the arrears, and like 2 days before they cancelled the execution. The legal fees, which will run into hundreds of thousands, that they have now incurred to put this thing in motion, is now added to your mortgage. And it adds interest over the 20 years or whatever it is. The same as your insurance, the same as whatever else they put into the bond. It's not a naked, just the property costs, a whole lot of other costs, including these lawyers' fees, is now part of your bond, and it accrues interest if you're not paying on time. So we can change it, Abel, but we need, that's what we need, a petition to Parliament, a petition to the Speaker, and it's not easy, but it can be done. But I tonight wanted to bring awareness, because this platform gives us that we can bring awareness to many things. I'm sure lots of you have learned so many things on this platform. And for me, this has always been niggling me, because I know we are just sitting ducks waiting for this thing to happen. If I tell you all the court cases and the horrible stories, how people's homes have been snatched, have been sold, and then some courts got it unsold. Now, if one court could do that, why not the rest? It's the legal uncertainty that the courts is prevailing in our legal fraternity. I am not talking ill of our courts. I think they do a good job in a lot of things. But I think when it comes to our rights, they need to be more proactive. The courts should have a summit, like with the Human Rights Commission, and talk about housing. The court has the other day, and I don't know where they're going to take this matter now, because the court has the other day told the human rights that their orders are not binding. That their orders are not binding like the public protector's orders. Now, these are both Chapter 9 institutions. How can your powers be different? The Constitution does not say there's a hierarchy of powers for the public protector or the auditor general or the gender commission or the language commission. These are all Chapter 9 institutions. Surely, for legal certainty, if they give an instruction, it should hold. This instruction that they spoke about with the human rights was a core instruction. It's for water, because a farmer cut off the water for people that were living on the farm that they wanted to evict, and they cut off the water. And the human rights said, no, you can't do this. This is a human right. You need to turn the water on. And 2 years later, the water is still not on. Now the human rights had to go to court to compel this person. And the court said, no, we can't. We can tell him to switch on the water, but you can't enforce it. I'm flabbergasted. How can you say that? And then the court says, your orders are not binding like the public protector. But why are you even putting this in one sentence? Because you're telling yourself that you are wrong, because these are both. And there are many Chapter 9 institutions. Can you imagine that if next we have the Auditor General that wants municipalities to implement whatever the Auditor General says, and they don't, And that office takes them to court. Can you see now legal precedent will make the Auditor General's word not be binding? So we should be more vigilant, and particularly because we are in the knowledge production. We are in education, we are in C-suites in business. We in economic production and knowledge production. We cannot let this kind of behavior prevails. We as educators cannot look at government structures and be scared of them. We have an onerous evolvement that we have to undertake as knowledge producers. We cannot let them continue and let us sit here on the sidelines sighing and having podcasts. We need to petition our parliamentary representatives. Let me just put in perspective again the importance of Parliament, the House of Parliament. The House of Parliament in a democracy like ours, where you have the three spheres of government, right? You've got your legislature, you've got your executive, and you've got your judiciary. Your legislature makes the laws, your judiciary interprets the laws, and the executive implements the laws. The lawmakers are the most important because they are voted for. So whoever speaks in Parliament speaks on behalf of you, not on behalf of a political party. That's why it's such an auspicious house. It holds the mandate of the people. When they speak, it's you speaking. That oversight is weak. We as citizens must hold them to account on that oversight. How? Through the standing committees. All of them. Education, NSFAS. Look at NSFAS. Why are we not petitioning as educators? Why are we not petitioning the Standing Committee on Education? The board of NSFAS needs more student representation. We have, I think, one body of student representation on the board of NSFAS. You should have at least 5 members of student representation bodies that oversees that fund. But we as parents who has probably family, relatives, and probably ourselves also that is dependent on NSFAS, we are not taking it on. We are letting, like Abel asked, why did we allow this to? Yes, we allow these things. We allow 60 billion rand of Black people's hard-earned sweat and tears to be denigrated, wiped out by the court system, aiding and abetting the banks. The court's action is not benign. It's detrimental to progressive realization. I see there's another hand. Zizi.
Thank you, Ella. Yeah, let me just take them. I think you have covered Babala, who said why it's taken so long. And I so hope that politicians who are in the platform, they may identify the gap and take this, because obviously you ask yourself why really they haven't realized this when they're in parliament. But I think I've argued in many of my uh, uh, interviews about the caliber and the quality of our lawmakers. I think colleagues who are here now, they will understand really when political parties are sending these people, or those people who become members of parliament representing different political parties. It's not just going there and eat cookies and drink cake, or I don't know if you drink cakes or eat cakes and drink coffee. And you've got to make things happen. You've got to shift and move the nickel there. You've got to identify a gap as a party or as a political or opposition party, and say we're going to run with this one and make it happen and make sure that we are representing our people and we're assisting our people. But I don't know in terms of do you really, our political parties understand that when they send their people there. But let's take Nobani. Nobani, over to you, my brother.
Yes, good evening, Doc, and all the esteemed leaders on the platform this evening. Thank you so much. Well, I want to say good evening, Prof, and then now I go to Doc. Doc, you are really challenging the way that I've been looking at this entire situation around home loans and 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 tying it to the right to a property or to a shelter as enshrined in our constitution. To Abel's point, I mean, we are more scared of a bank repossessing our home than we are scared of being chased away by a landlord, because we have the power to say to a landlord, or the courage more than the power, if you chase me, get me alternative accommodation. But I've never heard anyone suggest that to a bank, or at least maybe I don't know many people who have had their homes repossessed, but maybe not even in jokes or in any comments ever heard anything to that effect. And you are making me again think very differently around the powers of these banks. I mean, in other instances, I speak about our banking regulation environment to be as strong as it is, even, I mean, us being lauded as one of the best financial services environment in the globe, with the introduction of the Twin Peaks model being the Prudential Authority, as well as the FSCA, making even banking stocks attractive to investors and all of that. But hidden beneath that are these unjust, inhumane, as well as plainly cruel activities. I have a friend. In fact, when I say I don't know anyone who has been repossessed, I mean who's had a house repossessed and asked for shelter, I happen to know someone who had a house sold while he was still staying in the house. He went to borrow 500,000 against a home that is worth 2.5 million, which he had built for cash. And when the hard times came, the person is in the creative industry. When hard times came and they couldn't make money, they were only owing 355,000 rand. The bank during that time went and put their house up on auction, and the house was sold for not even a fraction, for a humiliating amount for the value of the house, let alone the intention, or let alone the debt against which the house was at. So I'm now thinking, Uguti, us as knowledge practitioners and the experts and the room that we are in here, what is it that can we practically do over and above that 60 billion lawsuit? And I know it's against the Red Bank. I've been following that. I mean, it was against many of the houses, which were early bond houses, and people struggled to pay and all of that. I mean, very, very sad story. And gentleman who was fighting for these people, with this now being a grassroots who started it off, really has my great admiration. But for us in this room, sitting here, what can we practically do to try and amend or to change or to influence what becomes of this? Because I speak from a position of privilege, or at least until this point, as Doc says, or the Prof says, if the circumstances change, I would lose this, what I deem as privilege, to be able to pay my bond and all of that and sorts. But I could easily be in that situation. So how can I help to insulate those who are there, and maybe prepare for myself, touch wood, I never get there, but to contribute towards a just cause? What can we practically do? I mean, I'm borrowing from what you were saying, that we as knowledge practitioners, experts, have to do something. So can I please put it to you to at least carve a way out for us, what you suggest or recommend we could do, and maybe we can, as a collective here, consider it, because it really is a big problem now that I think about it in the way that you've presented this so articulately, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nkobani, for that question, and yeah, and for your comments. Like I said, we need to petition the lawmakers so that they have scrutiny on Because as you quite rightly say, Nkobani, they probably don't even know because they are not looking at it, or like Prof was saying, because of the, because there's no discernment in who goes to parliament, as you know. It's a popularity contest, most of it. But it's not that they're making laws on their own. It's, of course, they have the law commission, and then they've got a whole battery of lawyers that assist in that. But ultimately, the politicians are the ones that we have to approach if we want to put, you see, to go to, now that the Human Rights Commission has been sort of given a blow, like, your findings isn't binding. I don't even feel that I want to petition them, but I feel that the Worldwide Institute, under its banner, can petition the Standing Committee on Human Settlements on the implementation and the consistent implementation of Rule 46A, and particularly on the words of the president of today that said that our constitution provides our legal certainty. Particularly on that very vocal thing, when I listened to it, I thought I need to bring this in perspective, because the Constitution is undermined by the custodians of it, and that's the judiciary. They are the ones that interprets. They can strike down the law, they cannot make it, but they can make case law, and they can ask for amendments. And I'm saying that the judiciary needs to be interrogated by Parliament. And for that, we need to petition that standing committee so that we can shed light on it, because this, I don't want to go into philosopher Hegel and property that said how important it is to own property. Let me just bring it to our South Africa and our tribal lands. If I don't have animals, I'm not sitting at the table and talking on the tribal land. So nobody's talking, nobody's at the table if they don't own a home. That asset, that primary home, that Section 26 home, it's necessary to protect it for all of us, not just for poorer people, because the middle class is the worst off, because we are one paycheck away from a mortgage default. If we default 3 months, we're sitting in a forced sale. It takes time, but all the time it takes, it's ticking money. It's ticking, adding money. So to say, yeah, it's not going to come today, by the time it comes, it has racked up 100,000 plus in fees, that on a bond that now sits at 300,000. Now it's 400,000. And they have now merged the banking ombud into this financial services ombud. And that piece I read out earlier on, that case went to the financial ombud. And that ombud made the bank write off. But you can understand how long that takes. We need better than a class action that can't get on, because procedural law is our nemesis in this country. Because if you don't follow procedure, ticking all the right boxes, you can lose the case even if the person is guilty. That's procedural law. And that is why my Section 34 rights, your right to a court or a tribunal. It's that tribunal right I want, because that tribunal can be Parliament. That tribunal can be a Zondo Commission. That tribunal can be a Matlanga Commission. That's what I seek for justice in our country. Because the court process, I don't need to tell you about the backlog, and then, like I say, all these processes, and if you don't follow it properly, and then you lose your case. So for me, we must go and challenge. This is a big enough thing for us to go and put the light of the Worldwide Institute, shine it on this particular, because it affects everyone in the room. It affects our grandchildren if we don't stymie this thing. And like I've shown you, there's no reason, nobody is losing when you're selling at the market value, because now you're balancing the rights. How? The bank, the debt is satisfied. That's the reason for me losing my right. Right? So the bank's got its right. Me, I've got money left to go restart progressive realization. My right is balanced. I got something. I can't get nothing, and the other party gets everything. That's not how the balancing of rights work generally. So that is why I feel strongly that we should go and petition. There are many things I can tell you we need to petition for that affects our daily lives. But this thing called home, we must not underestimate the reason the townships continue to be beset with violence and the way it goes on is the dignity to homes. People are sleeping 10 in a small space. If you don't know it, you can't fit yourself into it. Me, I come from that world. I come from under a tree, barefoot, schooling, in a farm. That's where I come from in the Western Cape, in the series, in the Rawsonville area. Coming to the city, living in District 6, you're always in a back room. You're always living in somebody's room. And then we got a council-issued home. And we did not even notice the defects, because the first time we put our feet on the table of a home that we are not sharing a room in. That's the dignity that comes with that home. It does not matter how modest. So the RDP homes, you can imagine how under threat they are, because those people are putting children through school. They're going to bond that RDP house. And why shouldn't they? Because this is how assets are built. And we live in a capitalist society. We can't get away from paying our bills. But we can balance it with the social justice aspirations. And everybody can win. We're not asking, write off my debt and I walk away scot-free, abusing the system. No, we're saying, balance the right. Give me all the money of this property and let me pay you and let me walk away with my dignity intact. It's dignity that makes us hate each other. It's the lack of dignity, the lack of a simple thing like a home. And because we sit quietly, because we can switch on the light, we can flush the toilet, we don't need to be bothered that we're going to be raped en route to the toilet when we go to the abolition block in the informal settlement. We don't need to think of that. But there's a focus that we need to put on this right to housing, because the thin line between success and failure lays there for us. Tomorrow, you lose your health. A sick executive is a useless executive. It doesn't matter how much money you've earned, and you haven't got your pension. And you know they've extrapolated the two-pot system again now. They've widened it because people are struggling now. That is why I'm saying, let us not end the conversation here like Ngobani was saying. Let us see, Prof, what we can do with this. How we can bring other NGOs on board so that we have a mass signing of it. I'm also trying to revive the Women's Empowerment and Equity Bill, because they've parked that law, because they said there are other laws that protects women. There's no law that protects women in our country. You have to sift through laws. The Domestic Violence Act is the only thing that's sort of, but we don't have a women's empowerment law. There is a law like that has been written, but it's been parked. because there's been all kinds of bad publicity. So I'm also trying to get that revived, and that is why I'm saying we must use Parliament. We're using Parliament too little. That's our accountability house. That is where we as citizens find our prowess. It's in that house. They cannot refuse what you ask if you write to them, because we will take them on. Then we take them to the public protector and say that this is not happening. And if the public protector doesn't help us, we take it to the international stage, because we've got the Covenant on Socio-Economic Rights Treaty that we've signed. So we have recourse. We are not powerless. Justice takes long, and it's not a quick fix, but it can be fixed. We don't need to live the way we do. And if you are God-fearing, you know we are here in service of each other. That's why we are here. So we must help the vulnerable, because we are more empowered than them. That's our reason for being. That's the reason we got the intellect, the knowledge. It didn't come to us by chance. It's God-given. You need to do something with it. If you know stuff, change the world for the vulnerable. We want a better society for all of us, not pockets, that we live in pockets of affluence. We want to live like that, the way we want. But, like we say, I don't want to sleep if my neighbor isn't eating.
Wow, powerful, Doc. Let me just, the last round, let me take some few colleagues there from the chat room, then I'll ask you to give us your parting shot. I think Dr. Gama came back. Doc, I'm wondering why this type of thinking from a jurisprudence and human rights perspective has not been spearheaded by the legal fraternity at large. Where are all the legal minds and human rights lawyers? Here are the human rights lawyers addressing us tonight. And then Dr. Mongezi, and even with interpreters, the language of these proceedings is confusing. Justice is not done, even if the law is followed. So there's one of the politicians, the Reverend Mitula. I won't disclose his party. What a powerful, ethical, transformative, and revolutionary decolonial education. Thanks a trillion times and beyond, Dr. Soraya Beukes. My brother there, Dr. Monges again. Is there a statue? What did I do here? Did I? Sorry, man, I don't know what I press and to still see from your side, Doc?
Yeah, it says, is there a statutory or even constitutional finality for the apartheid remnants of family homes and the challenges that continues to come from it? Is there a statutory or even Yes, that is why I'm saying that this Bill of Rights, we mustn't take it lightly. It must be implemented. Every time, I sit on the Council for Housing. Every time they write some document that they're going to read somewhere, then they preamble all the laws of the Constitution and how we are doing right by the people. Every time. You must look at any one of the official documents. It starts with that introduction. These are not mere words. There's another thing from Anna. Anna says, Doc, may I please connect privately? We are currently developing the terms of reference for women empowerment, and your insights would be valuable. Yes, please get my details from Prof. We can certainly do that. That is very exciting. Thank you. I think that is the last in the messages, Prof.
Thanks, my sister. Maybe any parting shots, then I'll close the session after that. Any closing remarks from you?
The parting shot for me is that we need to get reinvigorated with a fight for our constitutional democracy. We've become complacent. We have let a lot of negative political, state institutional denigration sidetracked us. We hold the power to not just hold the state accountable, we hold the power to change the narrative. We, the people. There are only so many of them. There are 62 million of us. That percentage that makes up the state, the politicians and the state, is too few for us not to be able to change, to give it a cosmic smack, to not be the apartheid perpetuating into ad infinitum. We don't want that. I hope tonight I can leave you with these words from Tupac. Tupac says, I'm not going to change the world, but I hope to spark the brain that changes the world. I hope I sparked your brain tonight.
Yes, indeed, we have Doc. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give our speaker our own Doc, Dr. Beukes, a round of applause, as we always do. Please find an icon there under React and press it as we are showing some appreciation and as we are grateful to Doc. Wow, what a masterclass. And this is what we are here. Why I love this platform, because we've got, a hub of intellectuals and expertise, people who are coming from different fields. I, for one, really, to be honest, because this is not my field, I didn't know what the Doc presented tonight. So this has been very super informative and instructive. And thank you so much, my sister. Indeed, I agree with Ngobani. We'll definitely take this on. What we'll do, we will put together a subcommittee or just a task team that will, devise a way forward in terms of how we can approach this, and we will use our network and our influence to penetrate Parliament and to make sure that we present this. And then I agree with you, Dr. Beukes. We probably, if it comes from a body that is not even political, that is just a intellectuals, group of intellectuals, maybe it will be even head or carry more weight. But as I'm saying that, it's a pity that not even single political parties identified this gap and really and worked on it. But yeah, there are so many, as we spoke about, women empowerment laws as well. As you know, we've produced how many? 2 books on women leadership, but we've also didn't even know that. We've got all our books. We are not even aware that even the women empowerment is that law is not there in Parliament. So thank you so much, Doc. We will advise the way forward, and obviously we will appreciate any guidance and any contribution and advices from the colleagues so that we can work together. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We've learned, as we always do. You know how we learned last week, today as well, and next week as well. We meet every Wednesday. For those who joined us for the first time, please do join us again next week. We're finding another speaker coming from another field, empowering us again. As you've seen, we come here, we are just learning all the time. Every week we learn. Thank you so much, Dr. Soraya, my sister. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your insights. You've empowered us, you've inspired us, and moved us really in your address tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the session is adjourned now. until we meet again next week. May God bless you, and may God bless our beautiful continent, Africa. Kosi Sigalele Africa. Thank you so much. Until we meet again next week, Wednesday. Thank you. Goodbye. God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye.